there's a narrative that exists that Florida State cannot develop, that Mike Norvell just relies on the transfer portal and he truly can't accelerate guys' careers to the next level. Now, that's an absolute load of hogwash, and it comes mostly from South Florida with Mario Cristobal and his goons down there in the media that perpetuate every single word that he wants to say against Mike Norvell, and they do it very effectively for him. It's changed some recruitments. It's certainly moved some things around. But the NFL draft and the NFL combine are going to show why that's a complete farce. Richie and I discussed it on this week's live show, and if you didn't see that conversation, I'm going to play it for you right now. Let me know your thoughts, though, as this starts to go. We started to talk about how long guys were in the program and what their careers look like before and after transferring to Florida State. Stick around because I think you'll enjoy this. Here's our conversation about it from this week. Pivoting just a little bit into 12 FSU players, 12 noles invited to the NFL Combine, 10 transfers, but 7 multi-year guys. I think I saw a stat that like 9 of the guys on the list were here multiple years, and then like 6 of them were here 3 years or more, right? That number, you know, I'd have to look through every single one of them, but obviously Jordan was here. Jordan Travis here 3 years, Trey Benson here 2 years, Keon a 1-year guy, Johnny Wilson 2-year guy, Jaheim Bell 1 year, Braden Fisk 1 year, Fabian Levitt 3 years, Jared Verse 2, Bethune 2, Kalen was here his whole career, Renardo Green here. Renardo Green was recruited by us, right?
Yep.
So all, entire career. And then Jarian Jones, I think was here 3 as well, 21, 22. And was he here 4 years? Jarian Jones?
I think it was 3.
I thought he was here in 2021. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, 3 or 4. So, there's obviously the narrative around development and certain programs, certain coaches try to use that. And yeah, I think in an ideal world, you would have loved to have guys in Mike Norvell's original class in 2020 that were here the whole time. Probably not realistic considering that early signing day was days after he was hired. And then you're trying to scramble to put a class together after, the previous coach had kind of run the thing into the ground. But what it does show is that guys that have been around since that time, like that long, like Kalen and Renardo Green and others, like really truly can be developed. Akeem Dent, somebody that, kind of thought might get a combine invite. Obviously he was here, committed. I think he originally committed when Jimbo was here, and then stayed through 2 years of Taggart and 3 years of or 4 years of he was here for all of Norvell because of the COVID year. But I think it shows that like, hey, if you stay here multiple years, you will get developed and go to the NFL. I don't know where like somebody like Tatum Bethune is going to be drafted, but I do think that he's not drafted if he doesn't come here. Like I don't really have a lot of questions around that. I mean, I tweeted this the other day. Trey Benson had 6 total carries before leaving
22
Oregon.
yards.
And and now has nearly 2,300 scrimmage yards. And under Mike Norvell, and a lot of places have him as like running back 1 in the draft. I know running backs don't go super high. I know it's not like a super elite running back class by any means. But still, if you're kind of being talked about as a top 2, 3, 4, 5 running back, let alone number 1, I think it's pretty impressive. And then that obviously goes without saying, like Johnny Wilson, was really struggling out there in Arizona State, didn't have a lot going for him. Jaheim Bell had really good numbers 2 years ago, struggled a little bit a year ago, and then obviously had a great year this year. Braden Fisk was a good player for Western Michigan, but all of these players, you're sensing a theme, took their career to a completely different level, even if they were transfers. And, Jordan Travis, I think, threw the ball, like 15 times or something, maybe less than that, maybe like had like 20 snaps or something like that in a Louisville uniform. And so, the idea that he wasn't developed at Florida State is hilarious. So there's this narrative around development, and there's this narrative around the portal or whatever. I think it is funny to kind of see. It's funny to read. Guys that are in the draft right now obviously wouldn't have been, when you look at how Florida State was recruiting when Mike Norvell first got here, I don't think it's a super big shock. But anyway, 12 guys going to the combine. Richie, I think you could see 10 or 11 guys drafted, and I don't even think you'd be very surprised by that. Hey, I'll get right back to it, but I want to show some love to my buddy John over at gotspears.com. Make sure that you're supporting gotspears.com. If you're doing any kind of shopping for birthdays, anniversaries, gifts, weddings, whatever you're looking for, GotSpears.com has the absolute best products. They have a great deal going on right now. You can use code TAKE50 on so many items on their website. That only goes through March 1st. They'll have a new deal going March 1st, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be as good or that you'll like it as much as this one. So make sure that you get your spear before March 1st. If you select that you're going to pick it up, or if you reach out to gotspears.com via telephone, I'll put the phone number in the description. You can also get your spear at the spring game. So you save on shipping and you get it way, way quicker. Make sure you're supporting my buddy John over at gotspears.com. You've seen pictures of it with Mike Norvell. Jameis Winston has one of these. Gotspears.com, the absolute best if you want a spear that looks just like what Osceola has out there with Renegade. I think you guys will enjoy it. Gotspears.com, go check them out.
Yeah, and to your point, think of when these players left their original school. Jordan Travis, zero NFL prospects. Trey Benson, zero NFL prospects. Keon, he would have been drafted. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. Johnny, no, no one wanted Johnny outside of Florida State. Jaheim Bell, he's just a freak. Braden Fisk, he had something to prove when he came here. Fabian Levitt, probably not drafted if he left Mississippi State when he did. Jared Verse was going to get drafted. He's just a freak of nature. But Tatum, no. Obviously, Caleb, we said, and Renardo both signed with Florida State. And Jerry Jones, Florida State fans did not like him his first year and a half or so, and he was developed. So, yeah, the Florida State definitely proved to develop all of these guys. Again, Keon and Jared are the only two guaranteed draft picks if they don't come to Florida State. I think Jared could have spent 4 years at Albany and still got drafted. He's just that much of a freak. And Keon Coleman, just an extreme athlete. It's funny. He wanted to make basketball his number one sport coming out of high school. If he was fully focused on football from day one, he might be, wide receiver 1 or 2 off the board and still might be a top 3 pick at his position. But yeah, it's just really cool to see that, we're back to a point where Florida State is churning out NFL players, and that, Mike Norvell and his staff can take credit for a lot of them. Again, I'll give you Keon, I'll give you Jared. Everybody else, that they were developed in Tallahassee, and they will say as much. And even Keon and Jared would say as much, to be honest.
Yeah, Jared has talked about, I think Jared had all the tools, but I also think that, Jared also realized that like he got bigger, faster, stronger. He said that, when he got to Tallahassee, he's never found like this version of himself. And that's, I'm not about to sit here and take shots at Albany, but I think when you get to a little bit better program, when you get around some better coaching, as much crap as we'll give some coaches for recruiting, like they do a great job developing on that defensive line. And so I don't think it's a surprise that you would see him become such a freak. I don't know that he's a top. I think he gets drafted, but I don't know that he's top 15. If he's all 4 years in Albany, maybe he is, but because I think even last year, you were talking about a late first round pick, maybe early second. So he certainly improved his stock. I mean, there's nobody that came here and didn't improve, where they'd be drafted, right? Like Keon and Jared were going to get drafted either way. I get it, but were they going to make the money that they made by sticking around Florida State, either for the extra year or just coming in general? So yeah, the combine will be fun to watch. Pro day will be crazy. Like you remember, you haven't really cared the last few years, but you remember how fun pro day used to be with all those, all that talent that was around, like, everything from, Jameis to Devontae to Telvin and all those guys that were playing. And then through the years, right? Like it feels like it's tapered off because you don't usually have 10 guys going to the draft every year. But even before that, right? Like, EJ Manuel's year, you were talking about Clemson a minute ago, and I thought about like the string of quarterbacks that you had going, first round overall every single year. Remember Clemson did that with
Under EJ Jameis, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I think that that's kind of fun to see again, and it just makes you relevant, right? Like it makes you, that's your brand getting called out over and over and over again at the combine, on draft night, throughout the weekend of the draft, and then ultimately in the NFL, right? When Monday Night Football happens and they're saying your players' names, like you're going to add a pretty good crop of guys to that list. So
One of my favorite pro days was Jalen Ramsey's. There was just so
he
much
was
buzz
insane.
around that. He shows up decked out in Jordan Brand gear from head to toe and just put on a show. It feels like we're getting back to that, to where you're going to have representatives from all 32 NFL teams at Florida State's pro day this year. And that's even been the case when Florida State's had their down years, but you're going to have high ranking people from these organizations in the NFL, not just a scout from the Southeast. You're going to have general managers, high-ranking officials from all these teams at Florida State's Pro Day this year, and it's just cool to be back to that. And I don't see that slowing up anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know that you're going to put 10 next year, but I think you're going to continue to see that talent go up. We could do like off the top of your head, who, you're thinking about like guys for next year. Like who could be that guy? Well, if anybody steps up at wide receiver 1, right? Like if Kentron was to go off or something like that, you've got other guys along the defensive line, Pat Payton, Daryl Jackson, Josh
Farmer,
Farmer
yeah.
are all going to be considered there. Azariah Thomas, like an absolute, that's actually a good transition, but Azariah Thomas, somebody that you could see really kind of take that leap. DJ Lundy, I think he needs to get a little bit quicker, a little bit better against the pass, but man, could he really shine? Could you have an offensive lineman or two breakthrough? Like Darius Washington's had a really good career. Rob Scott's kind of a freak. Yeah.
Rob Scott.
If they can stay, kind of healthy, where does that end up for next year too? And then the big one, DJ Uyunglele, right? Like what can that end up looking like? Some of these transfers, Murphy, Malik Benson, Royce, like the running back. Like I think there's some
Wardell Williams, yeah.
Yeah. So, what's my guy TJ Ferguson out of Bama? What can some of these guys truly look like after
Kyle Morlock
a year or two? Yeah. So there's a lot there that kind of to be determined. Along really all positions at Florida State right now. So